stay one step ahead by back engineering their concepts.
To step out of those old contracts with those corrupt parties and acknowledge that we must come into contract with a new ethical party.
Project Override.
The beginning.
Here we are.
Project Override.
That's right.
I'm Mark,
I'm Tad.
and we're here to do a 12-part series starting with who we are and going into Project Override and different topics that surround changing the system that manages world affairs and affects our lives and the contracts we enter into.
Yeah.
And the slogan for Project Override is overriding the resets. And this is a direct slogan towards the World Economic Forum's Great Reset, because we are in direct opposition to the agenda being pushed on a world stage by, looks like, a majority of our leaders.
Almost. Well, I actually kind of think of it as we're not even just in opposition. We're a parallel option. Like, we're in parallel, trying to like stay one step ahead by back engineering kind of their concepts.
Yeah, totally. So just like blockchain technology has evolved to disintermediate the control banks have, we're also looking at technology, distributed ledgers, decentralized ledgers, blockchain as a way to disintermediate government and governance.
Mm-hmm.
So we should start off with who we are, so y'all get familiar. And of course, you can't trust us if you don't know us, but don't trust us anyway. Verify.
Yeah. Trust yourself.
Trust yourself.
Yeah.
So Tad, I met a few months ago, and I've stuck around being friends with Tad here to verify that he is who he says he is, and I've come to the conclusion he is. I don't know too much of your backstory, so I'm going to start with you. And just how we met was I released some videos on my Telegram, and you sent me an email, and you told me, hey, come to Duncan, let's do a little talk. And so I came over, and there's about 20 people that attended.
Yeah.
And you hosted that. That was great. And so we became friends after that. So let's hear a little bit more about you.
Yeah, sure. Great. What drew me to you was I've always come from this place of like wanting like an effective action. I want to be able to take a concept and take it from the actual sort of idea stage and put it into a functional thing that starts to create its own momentum and creates literal like three-dimensional change in this world, right? Because I find that most concepts I come across are, while they're beautiful in concept, like the idea of oneness or the idea of unity, and although we need those pieces, you can't create change if we don't all come from a similar place within our own being. It doesn't have to be the same place. It doesn't have to involve the same ideologies or any of that kind of stuff. But it does have to involve an underlying kind of momentum or desire to create a shift. That's usually where things stop. They sort of get to that stage, and it's this wonderful, beautiful idea. And so when I saw your project, it was just through my own studies, my own research, I'd kind of come to the realization that a lot of this realm and what the governance that we live within or under or beside, however you want to look at it, it relies on contracts, it relies on, certificates related to birth or, whatever it is, your finances. It's all this centrally sort of controlled system, and that system is somewhere else. I don't know where it is. If I want to go across a border, I need a passport. That passport connects to a whole series of whatever it is, information stations in this digital realm that I have no concept of and I have no control over. So it's like my identity out there in the world that is used to verify who I am so that I can travel and be part of this world and participate, have jobs, have healthcare, is not in my control. And therefore that means if I have property, if I have children, if I have a car, I have whatever it is, if that thing is registered in a system that I don't have ownership over, I don't have ownership over myself, and those things can be used against me or taken away. And you were offering, from what I could tell, and now that I've gotten to know you better, it seems that it's very legit. You were offering a way that we could start to work with those parts of this realm and take them into our own power. So, yeah. I mean, that was why I was drawn to you. My history a bit. I should probably say a little bit of that. I grew up the Cowichan Valley. I went to an alternative school, so it was a very small school. We had a lot of kind of, slightly different ideas. It obviously is still an indoctrination system. Any kind of schooling inherently has a bit of programming to it. But we were taught one piece which was very helpful, which was critical thinking. So I've always questioned things. I've always questioned political narrative. I've always questioned, what we're being told is the truth. Like, what is history? I remember arguing with my teacher in high school, and we were learning, modern history, and I was like, I don't think this is true. You're telling me that the history is written by the victor, but that history is also 100% true. That in itself is a consequent logical fallacy. That's not a real, sort of solid sort of thing to build your truth off of. So I've always just wanted to find a way to shift things, and I've explored spirituality. I've explored, any kind of concept I thought would help me shift. And I've done a lot of work on myself, a lot of work with others. And yeah, it always comes back to that one piece, which is I want to do something in this life with the energy I have to create the change I want to see. And I need actionable pieces. And I think that's where Project Override comes in. So maybe you can tell us a bit about that, the vision you had and how you kind of got there, and a bit kind of your story leading up to that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So make it quick on the bio side. I was born in corporate Canada on the lands of Canatan, and that was in Saskatoon, and then raised in Calgary. When I turned 19 out of high school, I made my way to British Columbia into Vancouver, and I did Vancouver Film School. Mm-hmm. I entered into the digital design program, where I learned all the aspects of digital design, guerrilla filmmaking, 3D animation, graphic design, print, interactive design. And that was kind of my first introduction into being able to take the concepts inside of my head and put them out to try and explain them to the world. And I was drawn towards interactive design because I was looking at the way Facebook and these other Web 2.0 technologies were affecting people's brains, especially the dopamine release you get when you see that you have so many thumbs up likes on Facebook. So I was very intrigued about how our neurochemistry was reacting to these digital technologies. And so my focus shifted away from video at that time to the digital interactive design aspect. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the solutions were my frustrations in high school. I was more of a rebellious type. I got more into questioning authority. I looked at, maybe it was a bit of influence from Timothy Leary, Think for Yourself, Question Authority, the psychedelic movement. I think grade 11, we were told to read Brave New World. And so that kind of literature spawned inspiration in me that saw the schooling system as a complete factory setup. Mm-hmm. And so that took me from deciding to not go to post-secondary university and to do a 1-year technical Vancouver Film School education. And so I was in my early 20s when I graduated. And at that time, we had a final project at Vancouver Film School, and I focused on interactive design. So at that point, I had a vision. You mentioned I had a vision, and this is kind of where Project Override and all the designs have started, is with an initial vision I had on May 4th, 2010, where it was around 2-3 in the morning. I got struck with like a lightning bolt, and it showed me this kind of system that was helping manage self-governing neighborhoods. And there was no kind of central authority. These neighborhoods or self-governing communities had their own sets of laws and rules, and those were respected. And the voting aspect is kind of what I started integrating as my final project. I decided to do a digital democracy, direct democracy tool that focused around a map. And so I spent many years after the fact. This was 2010, so shortly after the birth of Bitcoin. I was aware of Bitcoin at that time. I didn't buy any Bitcoin, didn't mine any Bitcoin at that time, but I knew there was some importance there. So I took the concept of this direct democracy tool, and I tried to go far with it, approaching investors, being entrepreneurial as a naive early 20-year-old, and I failed over and over again. So that project, Who Talk, turned into the Co-Creatrix, which then had to be on hold until technology caught up with the idea.
So the Co-Creatrix was...
The Co-Creatrix was an expansion on the voting tool,
Yeah.
which kind of created, if we look at the Matrix, the Co-Creatrix is a concept that integrates the real world and the digital world.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I'm carrying forward today as well. But the main aspect of what I had done at that point was falling on deaf ears. So technology wasn't at the point that the concept could be realized. And then I remember finding Ethereum, the beginning of Web 3.0. It wasn't called 3.0 at that point. But I remember finding Ethereum when it was like an hour to the countdown of their ICO. Didn't have any Bitcoin, never got into Ethereum's ICO. Years later, I got into crypto in 2017 and started experimenting. But the technology itself, disintermediation of corrupt middlemen, is what caught my attention.
Yeah.
And so the very principles of Bitcoin, of cryptocurrencies, I saw as a tool that we could secure our freedom.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm carrying forward today. There's a lot of hype around cryptocurrency and making money. And to everybody who's making tons of money on cryptos, keep going. But I'm looking at the principles behind Bitcoins and the companies and groups, the community groups that have high ethical standards to carry the vision forward.
Yeah.
So this is kind of where law comes in, and you're talking about our position and contracts with the current system. And so when I had found this, when I found this idea, because it struck me, it's not inherently my own idea, it's an idea that came from elsewhere that I feel I have the duty to manifest. And if anybody out there can create it, then I'll join them. But if the ethical standards are not there, then I have to carry it forward. So this is what we're doing right now. We're carrying forward this concept that always is manifest in another realm somewhere, and we're going to bring it into reality, into this realm.
Yeah.
So when I was struck with the vision, I was struck with a little bit of fear, because I realized if this vision were to come to pass, it would be in competition with the system that currently exists. And I'm sure that I would come under legal attack. So I decided at that point forward to start self-studying law and administration. So I'm now at 11 years in administrating my own property, administrating my own contracts. And this is where I'm pairing my knowledge of law and how we're kind of introduced and come into the system, and how this is the main kind of component where we can actually separate ourselves from the corrupt state and pull ourselves out.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to address a few ideas that kind of came up with that just before we wrap up this first session here is I think that one of the cool things about what you're doing is we don't, as individuals, what we're trying to create is something where you don't necessarily have to have an understanding of, say, like a cryptocurrency or how those things work in order to participate. Is that correct? We want to simplify it. That's part of what the project is kind of about, is downstepping this concept so people can onboard without fully getting that. Yeah.
They get the closure of how it works. There's not too much complexity, but there is a blueprint that they understand.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing is that, I just wanted to just quickly throw this out there. I understand that with anything like this, there are unknowns, there's risks, and that is the nature of this realm. If you want to create a change, if you want to be part of something that's momentous, that's always going to be there as a potentiality, but we can't focus on that, because if we do, we won't create change. At the same time, I think your project really acknowledges that there is dangers out there, and it's taken, which you'll learn about as we go on, but it's taken steps to protect this concept from that. So we'll get into this in the next session, but you've kind of secured the platform for this to happen. And that's what really excited me. And that's why I reached out to Mark, and that's why we're here today. So do you have anything you want to say just before this final session finishes?
Yeah, the technology itself is secured. We haven't just relied on one community. There's multiple communities that have the base infrastructure that we're building on top of. So we're not building blockchains from scratch here. We're utilizing pre-existing communities and building on top of that. And if we are going to continue to complain about the state of affairs, we should at least look at who we're currently in contract with and consider the risk and have the courage and boldness to step out of those old contracts with those corrupt parties
Yes.
and acknowledge that we must come into contract with a new ethical party.
Yes.
So that's all I have to say about that.
Cool. And we'll see you in the next one.
See you on the next one.
Override.
The beginning